Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We will spend about 20-25 minutes talking about GTM server-side and how it can support you in better digital marketing in 2026. And I am joined here by Elin this morning. She will be helping out and being with you in the chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please write them in the chat and we will answer them directly or answer them at the end of the webinar when we will have a Q&A. And as people are joining, I also want to point out that we have two more upcoming webinars. We're going to have one in 2 weeks on March the 18th, a follow-up on this where we will be more hands-on. It will be a walkthrough, a demo. We will show GTM server-side tags, triggers, data flow, how to set everything up and verify. So make sure to join that one. And on the April of 8th, we will be joined by Anton, who will be talking about how to build your own marketing data warehouse and how you can use that for analytics, AI agent, and data activation. And Elin is posting the links in the chat, so you can register for them now already. And this is me. I work as a senior digital analyst at Control Digital, and my background is in digital marketing. And that's sort of the mindset I go into this. How can we work with data to support our digital marketing, our performance marketing? And we work at Control Digital, and we are an agency that work with tracking, collecting data, warehousing data, and activating data. And of course, privacy and compliance comes into that. We help out with that, and also analytics and insight. What do we do with the data? How do we draw insights and work with it? But this morning, we're going to talk about what is the situation for digital marketing in 2026 and why we need data, because it will just be easier if we didn't need to collect data, right? Well, we need data for, I would say, 3 main areas. And this is, we need these capabilities in our organization. One is to collect data for analytics. We want to understand how the user is using our website or our app. So we do that with like Google Analytics, Buick Pro, Amplitude. Another one is that if we are running ads, for example, or have a commercial business, we want to optimize and increase we want to lower our ad spend and increase our return of investment. So we need to send conversion value to the algorithms at, for example, Google Ads, Meta Ads, affiliate tracking. And a third one could be that we want to build audiences and do remarketing. We want to say, these are people that I want to target, and these are people I don't want to target. So we need to work with data in 2026. And traditionally, for many years, we have done this with tracking pixels. So let's say you have your site, your e-commerce site. You install a tag manager, such as Google Tag Manager. You then install pixels using that. So that could be the Meta Pixel, Google Ads tracking pixel, Google Analytics, and so on. And these are essentially JavaScript libraries that send important data to the ad platforms. So when an add to cart happens, that data is sent. When a purchase happens, a conversion, that data is sent. And that is how we have collected data up until now. But how is digital marketing feeling and doing in 2026? Well, I see 3 major pain points that I want to address in this webinar. And the first one is cookie limitations. This is a huge pain point for all of these operations and capabilities. And if we see it like this, cookies still remain our fuel. We need them to identify a user and attribute correct value. So let's say we're running Google Ads advertising. A user clicks on an ad, they come to our site. Well, we store what ad they came from in a cookie. And say, this user here, this browser came from this ad. And then some time passes. It could be a couple of minutes. It could be a couple of days. Hopefully the user converts. They buy something. They send in a lead form, for example. So we know the value of the user. And since we now have stored the identity of the user in a cookie in the browser, we can say the user that came from this ad contributed with this value. Okay, the algorithm can work with that. But what is happening to our cookies now in 2026? I would say that today they are mainly restricted by Apple and their technology. Apple's intelligent tracking prevention deletes cookies after 7 days. 24 hours if they are linked to ad tracking with a click ID. And this goes for all of the big platforms, Google Ads, Meta Ads, Snapchat, Pinterest, and so on. And this happens for all Safari browsers and all Apple devices, such as iPhone and iPad, because they have to use this technology as well. And when we have looked at customers, if we're talking about Europe, Nordic market, around 50% of the traffic is affected by this today. And what that does is that, let's say a user comes in from the Google Ads, and now we have an Apple device, such as an iPhone. The cookie is stored. It takes more than 24 hours for the user to convert. He comes back the next day to finish his purchase. Well, the cookie is then deleted by ITP, maybe. And as value happens, we can't attribute that to this ad. It just looks like this value came out of thin air. And this leads to underreporting of our results. Our Google ads that we're paying money for are bringing in results, but we can't see it. The algorithm also loses momentum. It doesn't see as much conversions, so it starts to save money. And this is especially true for longer customer journeys. If you think you have a customer journey that is maybe a few days or over a week, then you will be hit by this. Another pain point is that in 2026, we have much more complex customer journeys because the website is no longer the final destination of the journey. Instead, it's the start of a customer journey. So how do we measure value in that landscape? Let's say the user comes in from an ad, Facebook or Google ad, to our site. They navigate, they look at products, and they convert. But maybe they start a subscription, or they send in a lead form, or they order products. Sure, we know the revenue, but we don't know what the profit is of those, the profit margin, or are they going to return customer lifetime value and such. So it's really hard to, at this stage on the thank you page, to say, what is the value we want to attribute to this customer in this ad? And the third one we want to address is privacy and compliance. This is getting bigger and bigger. Authorities, internal stakeholders, and customer are placing higher demand on how their data is handled. And we can look at these news article from Sweden, where some companies used their Meta Pixel that collected way more information and personal data than they intended, and resulting in huge fines. So you have to be careful today with your customers' data and how you are implementing your data flows. And why is this? Why is it a problem? Well, tracking pixels are hungry for data. They are essentially JavaScript that runs in the user's browser, and that will expose a lot of information for them to collect. They will see the user's IP address. They can set and read cookies. They have access to anything a user writes into a form, address, name, email address, for example, technical information, all information on the page, what products they are browsing, the URL, and much, much more. And we see this over time, that these pixels are evolving into being more, collecting more data about the user. So it's tough to be a digital marketeer in 2026, I say, and drink some coffee. But GTM server-side can help us and solve these pain points, and that is what I'm going to show now. So if you recall, traditional tracking, we run tracking pixels in the user's browser. But what we do now instead is that we still have a web GTM running on our site, but we set up a server running a server-side container. And this is a server we control and we own. When something happens on site, such as an add to cart or purchase, something we want to track, we send that to our server. And then that server will pass on the necessary information to third parties. And this might sound simple, but this gives us a lot of different benefits. One, we can protect our cookies. If we have server-side set up in the correct way, we're going to come back to that. We could use the server to set cookies in the user's browser. So let's say in this previous example, user comes from Google Ad on an iPhone to our site. We use the server-side GTM to set the cookies instead of the JavaScript. 24-hour passes. Well, these cookies are now protected, so they persist. And in this example, value happens, someone makes a purchase, we can correctly attribute this value to Google Ads, even though 24 hours have passed on an Apple device. Second, we have control over the data, meaning we could, for example, enrich it from different sources. So we look at this flow. Let's say a user makes a purchase. The data will flow to our server, where we could enrich it with other data sources. It could be profit bidding, saying these products have this profit, this margin, this customer have this customer lifetime value, for example. And we could do this without exposing it on our site, on our front end to the left. So it's all server-to-server communication hidden from maybe our competitors that want to see what we are doing. So this makes it much easier to do profit bidding, customer lifetime value, and such in a safe way. Privacy compliance. This is a big one for many of our customers. Remember that if we have running third-party JavaScripts in the browser, they could access a lot of information potentially. Well, what we do now is we are running all that logic on our server, and we don't need these tracking pixels on our site if we don't want to. And this gives us much more control over what data is shared. So let's say a user, I make a purchase. That data, together with my IP address, will be exposed to our server, yes. But we could then choose to not share the IP address because we maybe consider that to be sensitive data. We don't want to share that with third party, but we can say it was a purchase with this value coming from this ad. And that is the information we want to share. So we have much better control of the data flow, what is shared outside of our ecosystem. So I think everyone now is wondering, how do we get started? And it's fairly easy to get started, I would say, in 2026. You can set it up yourself, just as you do with regular web-based GTM. With the server-side instances that you need, it requires some technical knowledge. You need to set up a server, and you need to do some initial tag configurations. I would say get help from a consultant with this, with a fast and safe start, because we see a lot of server-side implementations out there that is working in a suboptimal way. It's set up in the wrong way, so it doesn't protect your cookies, for example, or you don't get the full benefit. No matter if you get help or do it yourself, you could still host it on your own servers, in your own infrastructure if you want, and have full control. So you don't have to give any of the control away over the data flows. And today you could host it on any of the large cloud providers. You could also host it on your own Docker. A common question here is, well, we are running our site or e-commerce store on Azure today. Do we then need to use Azure for GTM server-side? No, you don't need to do that. We mostly work with Google Cloud setting this up. It's really good support, very easy, and you get access to a lot of other Google Cloud services that integrate well with Google server-side, Google Tag Manager server-side. A summary of what we have been talking about. Why do we need server-side GTM? First off, protect your cookies from restrictions, and these restrictions are only getting tighter and tighter by the day, I would say. A properly set up, and that is important to say. If you have set it up correctly, EP alignment, it will protect and preserve your cookies, giving you better attribution. You have control over your data. You can enrich with data from different sources, for example. You could also save data from the data stream to your own database. And it can help you with privacy compliance. You can limit third-party access to your user and to your site and your application, and get much better control over what data is shared. And we always advise that you get help with the setup, because we see a lot of server-side setups out there that is suboptimal. It's not set up in the correct way. Great. And I want to remind that if this sounds interesting, I have a follow-up webinar in 2 weeks where I will show the interface, set up some tags, some triggers, show the data flows, show how we can transform the data, limit what is shared, and so on. And you can register to that now already. You have the links in the chat. And after that, we are doing a webinar about building a marketing data warehouse in BigQuery, how you can collect all your data in one place and what benefits that can give to you. So sign up for both of them, and I will see you there. I also gonna say, before we jump into questions, is that we have a newsletter. So you can sign up by scanning the QR code, and then you will get all the info about upcoming webinars. And if you are curious about starting with server-side, well, reach out to us at hello@controldigital.com, and we can have a chat about it. Also, if you are running server-side today, but are unsure if it's the optimal setup, reach out to us there as well, and we can have a look and get back to you what our recommendations would be for you. So that was my last slide. Thank you for listening, and I'm ready if you have any questions. Let's see what people have. Hello, Ellen. Welcome back.
Thank you. So we have a question. How do you refer to documentation link? How do you refer to documentations like Meta, where they point that the best and redundant way of configuration is to have pixel and copy?
Great question. And this is something I think all ad platforms recommend. And what they mean is that you have both the tracking pixel running in the browser, collecting data, and you have a data flow for your server side. So you're basically sending it through 2 different paths, and then it's joined together at Meta. And the benefit with this from the ad platform's perspective is that they get more data, basically. They can collect some data from the browser. They can get access to third-party cookies, but they also have this server-side stream with protected cookies. So you get the best of both worlds. We always recommend doing that. I mean, if you are going for optimal performance marketing, that gives you the best data to have both client and server. What you just should be aware of is if you're strict about privacy and compliance, for example, maybe you only want to do server tracking and have better control. So it comes down, and that is always a a scale. How high do we want to be on the privacy and compliance and control, and how high up what do we want to be on performance marketing performance, if that makes sense, Elin?
Yes.
So I think you should sit down and it's up to you as a company, where do you want to position yourself in that matrix of risk and reward?
Good. What would you say, is there any common mistakes that people do when setting this up? Have there been any recent changes in best practice?
Yes. The most common mistakes we see for people that have, or companies that have been running this for a while, is that they don't have the correct EP alignment. So when server-side GTM was released, ITP, Apple's ITP, was not as strict. That meant that you could just have one of your subdomains and use that as a path to the server-side container, and that would enable you to negate Apple's ITP. But since that, Apple have developed, so they are now looking at IP address as well, and look if is the server-side container's IP address different when than your site's IP address, and they will still hit you with ITP if that is. So that requires a bit more of the setup, and it's hard to just see in the browser because everything looks okay, you get data and so on. So that requires some detective work, and depending on your IT infrastructure, a more advanced setup with your load balancer to get the same IP address, I would say. Yeah.
Good. We got another question here from Nicole. Are there any GDPR issues with storing this data on, for example, Google Cloud or other non-EU cloud services?
I wouldn't say issue. I would say it's a GDPR matter. Anytime we handle data, store data, process data, and so on, GDPR will come into effect. Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, and so on are American companies. So you definitely want to, and that goes for any service that you use. This is not only for GTM server-side. This is for Google Ads, Google Analytics, Amplitude, and other services. You definitely want to involve your DPO and your legal department in any decision you make here. But that goes for any sort of data transfer, any data processing you do.
Perfect. But this is a question like, are there any estimated costs for setting up and maintaining a server-side setup that you should be aware of before doing it?
So the cost for GTM server-side as a tool or as a software is just like with Web GTM. It's a free service, but you need to run it somewhere. You need to run it on a server, and that could potentially cost you some money. If you host it on Google Cloud, and that is the most common setup we use, it's around €100 per month for a normal site. It depends on how much traffic you have. But for many clients we work with, I would say around €100 per month if you host it on Google Cloud.
Great. We also got a questions regarding if the slides are shared afterwards.
No, we didn't intend to do that, but we will record this and upload the whole webinar to YouTube, our YouTube channel. Maybe you could share that link as well, Elin, our YouTube channel, and we will share the whole recording there as soon as possible. You can see everything there.
Perfect. Now we have another question from Elizabeth. What is the main reason you use Google Cloud instead of example Stape?
I'm going to move us so they can see the QR code. Why would you use Google Cloud instead of Stape? So Stape is a managed service, I would say, for server-side. So they take care of the hosting, monitoring, and so on. I would say it comes down to how much control you want of the setup. It's similar, I mean, with any hosting service. You could have someone doing it for you, taking care of your site, your e-commerce store, or you could have it in your own infrastructure. So I would say it comes down to how much ownership and control you want to give away. In the end, it's the same effect or the same product in the end, but it comes down to control and ownership of the setup.
Perfect. Another question here. Is Google Cloud just a platform to build or set the infrastructure, or can it also be a host, or could it also be a host to our servers like how Stape is, for example?
I'm not really sure on the question. I mean, Google Cloud is contains a lot of different services. from server hosting, load balancers, AI services, BigQuery, and so on. They have hundreds of different services. So some companies use Google Cloud for the whole setup. Some use Amazon Web Services, Azure, and different services. Google Cloud have a huge umbrella of different products, I would say. One of them is to host servers, and we could use that hosting servers for running our server-side GTM.
Great. Another question. Server-side operates in a black box. Have you encountered any abuse of the non-transparency to the visitor?
Great question. I'm going to go back a bit. Maybe I can show here. So in this example, we are sending an event to the server. Let's say it's running in Google Cloud. And on the server, we do processing. And we pass information along. The user that is sitting on the left, his browser, he can only see that the purchase is sent to the server. He can't see how is the information passed on and such. And this is, of course, a double-edged sword, as you are pointing out, because it's good that we could have server-to-server communication and don't need to expose information. But that means it could also lack transparency. The user is not seeing where we are sending data. I would say that this ties into the GDPR question. If you are working in the EU, there are laws on you have to be transparent in how you share a user's data, what you use the data for, and so on. You still need to be transparent about that on your site. Also, of course, e-privacy, consent, and such still applies. We still need consent from the user to use their data, for example, for marketing purposes. So this doesn't change anything in how we as a company need to work with transparency, consent, documentation, and so on. The benefit, though, is that we now actually have control and we can guarantee it in a much better way.
Okay. Another question. How do we estimate the cost involved for a GCP setup, cloud run, networking, etc., when a client wants to implement server-side tagging along with the existing web GTM, and we only have the total annual event count provided by the client?
So the cost, if you let's say we have it on Google Cloud and Cloud Run, the cost depends on how much traffic we have, because the more traffic we have flowing through here, the more instances we need to not lose any data. And for most clients that we have seen, 1 or 2 Cloud Run instances is probably enough to cover the need, and that is around then €100 per month in Google Cloud bill. But it's hard to say. I mean, there are some calculators online where if you have an event count and you know how much data is flowing through, you could get an estimate. But my estimate here would be €100 per month, unless it's a huge site. And the benefit, I would say, with Google Cloud is it's very transparent with billing. So it's easy to follow up what is costing us money every day, how can we optimize, and so on. I'm going to go back to the QR code there. So great. But if you have any more questions, maybe you are curious about server-side, or you already have a setup today that you would like to have audited, have us check it out, email us at hello@controldigital.com. Sign up for our newsletter and register for our upcoming webinars that Elin have put the links in the chat. And I hope to see you then next time, where we will be a bit more hands-on. See you then.